I'm here today to talk about where I'm from, which is the Appalachian part of Ohio and some small towns there. But I want to say first that I know almost everybody in this room is already doing really wonderful things. So I'm not here to tell you some new things about what to do. What I want to do here by telling this story is show you a community through a network lens. So you get some language. You're already, many of you, doing this intuitively. You're connecting people. You're making things happen in your community. But I'm going to try to give you some language and maybe some new techniques that you can use to make your work even more effective. So, I'm from a place in the Appalachian part of Ohio. There's really a lot of small towns that are really pretty empty. And, a lot of people who were discouraged. And I'm talking like, maybe it was, 10, 15 years ago when we started. But there was a small group of us that were like, no, we're not going to go down in defeat. We're going to see if we can do something in our communities because we've got we know these towns have just tremendous potential. So what we did, and this is like Act 1, start with a great idea. Now, I do a lot of network mapping. This is a map of a community. I think this one might be Newfoundland. Northern part of Newfoundland or something. So I map communities and help them understand the relationships in their communities. And every rural community that I've mapped, there has never been more than like two little nodes, and each of those nodes stands for a person. There's never been more than two people who are from outside that rural community. Most rural communities are incredibly isolated. And yet, there's millions of ideas out there, fabulous ideas, from all over the world, that people in rural communities are doing great things. And there are ideas out there for you to steal and improve and modify to yours. But the first step, you have to think about your network and where does it reach to? Who in your community knows people in other communities? And is it just you? Or do a bunch of people have connections outside? And if they don't, you're not going to be having that great flow of new ideas coming into your community that you need. Of course, you're going to want to make them your own, change them, but you get inspired by other people. And without that inspiration, it's going to be a lot harder to come up with really good ideas. So we looked at a whole lot of stuff that was going on out there, and we came up with this idea. We just invented this idea that, 12, 14 years ago or something, we called regional flavor. And the idea of regional flavor is that we all have assets in our communities. We all have quirky things. We have unique things about our communities. But by themselves, they're not that interesting. It's only when we get people engaged in our community in mostly cross-sector. If you don't have like an artist working with a tourism person, working with a food person, it won't be as juicy and interesting. So, it's taking those local assets and then helping people do stuff with them that make people both want to live there and want to come to your place. And that's all regional flavor is. So, of course, when we started, we had the name regional flavor, but did we know what we were talking about? No. We just had a little idea. So what we did, the first thing we did was set up a learning group. And this is something we could all do. Funders are interested in this. We got some funding from the Kellogg Foundation, I think it was. And we found 6 communities in rural areas, from the Delta of Mississippi all the way to White Earth, to the grape region of Lake Erie, which was really fun because they make a lot of wine there. And and then the people in southeastern Ohio. And we went and visited each other's places and gave each other ideas, stole ideas from each other, and helped support each other in this hard work. And so we brought this group to one of the little towns, this is Nelsonville, and when people visited, it had 30 empty storefronts. You can see it's a really nice little square there, 30 empty storefronts. They said, oh, you got great bones. You know, if you know what that term means, I mean, the architecture, stunning, kind of Victorian architecture. They said it could use a little paint, and then started giving suggestions of places that had done really great stuff with their bones. So we had bones. We had little abandoned coal mines. I mean, probably no one in here knows that the birth of the CIO, of the AFL-CIO, was out in the hills in New Straitsville and Shawnee, Ohio. But, you know, it's not that exciting to think about, oh, I'm going to go visit New Straitsville. But some artist came up with this, the little cities of black diamonds. Doesn't that make you want to go there? I mean, just, you know, and that's where it's like bringing those people together to kind of rework what you've got. And we'll talk more about them later. We also were the place where the paving bricks for mid-America were made in the 1910, 1920. They were made in this area. And here's one of the really beautiful ones called the Star Brick. And you can see, you know, artisans started noodling around with it, right? And making some neat little things out of that pattern. We had these things, I don't know if you have them here, Opry houses. They call them Opry houses, not opera. And they were theaters with a theater on the second floor, and mostly in pretty bad shape. A group had just gotten finished kind of fixing this one up. And that's what we had. We also had lots of people. We had, you know, people in each of these categories that cared about their community. But the problem was, this is what it looked like, right? Does this look familiar? You know, so silos with maybe somebody once in a while walking between them, but they really, lots of territorialism, lots of mistrust. So this is what, you know, we had to work with. So what did we do? We started trying to help find people who are what we call natural network weavers and help them become network leaders and got them to build the networks. So where does it start? With a coffee shop, right? So there was, in this little town, there was a woman who was, her family owned a big factory. She had lots of money and she was very bored, so she started a coffee shop. And what happens in coffee shop? People talk. And so she was a natural network weaver, and some of our staff from the organization, I was part of an economic development organization, entrepreneurship organization, they started hanging out there. And before you know it, they found somebody that was saying, oh, you know, I've been thinking about starting a store to sell the local pottery that people make. And so people encouraged her. She set up a little store called Starbrick Clay, a wonderful, crazy place, and it started doing okay. So now this doesn't, I've got to admit, this next one doesn't always happen, but I think it could happen more than it did. So that benefit, the woman who owned the coffee shop, she said, I will subsidize the rent of any artisan that wants to start a business. I'll pay the rent for 1 year, and then you're on your own. So 25 different people took her up on that. And so within a year, there's there's a sculptor who makes these fabulous sculptures. There's a paper making studio. There's, you can go in and make your own paint your own little cups, that kind of place. And a gallery and an old theater. Just a very interesting mix but make it and they will come. It doesn't work that way. So, we got the network weavers, we got started training and getting people to think of themselves as network weavers, all different ages, backgrounds, from not just artisans, but people in the economic development, government, anybody who felt like it. And in the handbook, there's like a network weaver checklist, and people take it and they go, "Ooh, I'm a network weaver," and they get really excited because they've been doing this stuff, but they haven't had a name to call themselves. And now all of a sudden they are real and they want to learn more. It's just, you don't have to do anything. Just give that out to people, have them take it, and you'll find your network weavers. And then you start building their skills. But network leaders are a little different than your traditional, stand in front of the room and tell us what to do leader. They are leaders who help other people become leaders. They're leaders who connect. They're all about thinking, ooh, I bet if I got this person together and this person, it would be very interesting. They're all about helping other people do. I would say one of our biggest problems is that we do too much ourselves and don't try to help other people do stuff that they would really like to do, but they're afraid to, or they don't know how. If we can spend more time helping others initiate and do, we're going to have a lot better economies in our communities. So what networks do is network weavers try to create these smart networks. So basically, what you try to do in your community, and the core will be smaller if you're just one little town. Regionally, it'll be a little bigger, but you try to introduce people to each other so they know who to go to if they've got a scheme and they want to figure out who to work, who's going to help them make it happen. And then you got to have that periphery. Maybe only one person's connected to, and most of those will be outside the community, or some of them might be foundations or rich benefactors. And that should be 3 to 5 times the number of people in your periphery as in your core. Okay, and you want lots of diversity in that core. That means you got to get people in your community talking to each other. So then the third act, coach people to start innovative collaborative projects. So, a lot of us are like this, right? We're walking around, we're trying to do all this work, and even if we try to convene people, right, does this feel really too familiar? So you try to I'll bring everybody together and we'll talk about our community, and they become what I call talk networks. Any of you, does that sound familiar? A talk network, right? Never gets anything done because they're talk. So I say, don't even bring people around the table. This is my radical thinking. Don't even bother. Do it all ground up. We need lots of experiments. How do you get really great experiments like this? You bring people together who haven't worked together before. You want it to be like this, like fireworks. And sure, when you go to fireworks, some of them are duds. Some of them go up, they're nice, but they're little. And some of them, they go up, right, they're nice, and then they get bigger and bigger because they're so successful, they fill the sky. That's what you want it to look like. But how does it happen? First, you got to find the energy. Like don't bring the people who should be at the table. Just go out and say, hey, this person, I hear this young person, and they're just getting really excited about X. I'm going to go talk to them, and I'm going to help them figure out what they really care about, and I'm going to help them do it. So you listen, you spend a lot of time asking questions, finding out what their skills are. And then you do this thing called closing triangles, where you find somebody else that can help them, or somebody else that has a similar interest, and you bring them together and help them, you get out of the way, and help them do things. So in the big triangle, artisans, tourism, economic development, you really want to do so. That's a key triangle that you want to close. But you've got to find individuals in each one of those that are going to be the right chemistry. And then you help them do something small. It might even be what I call a twosie. 2 people get together, they get on the computer, they see what they're doing in Australia. And believe me, there's some really interesting things in Australia. So you have twosies or a small group that you're helping them make something happen. But you don't necessarily even go to their meetings. Maybe one person's a coordinator and you're coaching them. So the job changes from doing to catalyzing and coaching. And you're helping, like, most people don't know how to have a decent meeting. And, so that it ends up that there's clear tasks and people know what they're gonna do, and, that the meeting goes whoop, whoop. So you can learn how to do that. I always say you only have to be a half a step ahead of somebody else. So if you don't even know that yourself, you can learn it and then pass that on. The other thing that needs to happen to make this thing work is money has to be restructured. So we had a grant, we had an innovation fund of $15,000. That's it, $15,000, and we gave out grants $50,000 to $3,000. People wrote a two-page proposal, and they found out if they got it within a month. Now, what that means is that then people have an idea. They know where to go get a little bit of money. So, and then another way is that you don't even need that. With these Kickstarter, how many of you have heard of that? Indiegogo, crowd-funded? No, you haven't heard of that? Okay, there's these sites that set it up so you can help people raise money. Here's two pals of mine. They raised $4,500 to go to the Slow Food Conference in northern Italy and eat fabulous food for 2 weeks. I mean, they just raised in like less than a month, they raised $4,500. So, just think how if you know how to use these and you have a decent mailing list, there's no project that's out of bounds. People are raising millions of dollars on these sites, and they're very easy to set up. And they made a little video telling why it was so important. But here's those 25 entrepreneurs we talked about that set up those storefronts. Well, they found a student who was an graphics artist who helped them, who drew this cute little brochure, made this brochure for them that was a walking tour of the city, and then they got $1,500 to print it out. But they put all their sweat equity in. Here's just some others of the projects. So this was years ago when this was innovative. Now everybody has a Final Fridays or a First Monday or whatever. But, so they had a Final Fridays to bring people in, lots of music, lots of food. Food is very important. And they had lots of entertainment there. The little Opry House, Stewart's Opera House, started having a music festival, which just happened. I just missed it this last weekend, and I think they had like 10,000 people there, and John Prine and Wilco, if any of you people know music. But, so that it was just fabulous, I heard secondhand, because I had to be up here. But the local culinary school set up a really gourmet restaurant there, and then they started buying most of their stuff from local farmers. And the students were getting practice, and it was yum. It's really good. Now, you also have to look for gaps. There were no bed and breakfasts anywhere in this area. So what did they do? Another partnerships. The entrepreneurship organization, the tourism organization, and a couple others got together, and they did a series of, do you want to start a bed and breakfast workshops? And now we have tons of bed and breakfasts in the area. Sometimes it just takes something like that. Lots of communities have abandoned churches that no longer in use. The city bought the church, helped an arts organization start up that is not only doing lots of really neat art stuff that are fun, but helping a new generation of artists. Okay, so lots of you have done that far, right? I think the piece that's missing is sort of how to be this thing I called rhizomatic. Okay, you know what this is? Ginger, and ginger is a rhizome, and what does that mean? If you pulled off a little bud from any part of that and you put it in the ground, it would grow into another big mass like that one. And so whenever we have a meeting, we're building leadership skills in other people so that they can go out and do something by themselves. We do a project, we think of what are all the little buds that we could add to this project to make it something more. And I'm going to give you a lot of examples. Okay, so on Final Fridays, they let street vendors sell anything. $5, you could get a table or a place for a rug. But the smart thing they did is that the entrepreneurship organization and, like a little loan fund went around and built relationships with these folks and helped them grow. And a couple of them actually moved into storefronts. So these pathways, you don't just let something happen, can we make it more? People got training in using, you can have a storefront, but lots of times it's a little rough in a small town. But if you also have an eBay store or an Etsy store, how many of you know about Etsy? Good. Then you can make it work because you're making a little money here, a little money there. The arts group went around to all the restaurants and got them to put art. You've always wanted to have dinner with like a Harley hanging over your head, right? So, paper mache, I hope. All of a sudden, lots of artists were selling more things because there's more art and things. Now, food. All artists have to understand how important food is. And that's a wonderful marriage there. And so you got to get your chefs to start being really competitive, developing you want them to be really innovative. Who wants to go to a breakfast that's hash fries and fried eggs when you can have some, exotic eggs Benedict on, whatever. So you got to get those chefs really, thinking innovatively. And the thing that we have done really well is to turn chefs into manufacturers. Every chef that has a decent product should be manufacturing it. And so, we were lucky we had a kitchen incubator, but it's not that hard to set up a bottling line. But then here's where the artists come in. Okay, how many of you have seen, local products like on the left, too many words, really bad graphics? We found a guy who was designing t-shirts, and he did this label for their tofu pasta, elegant package. The day they put that out, they started charging twice the price, and their sales doubled almost instantly. This is why artists, they're really key to really make. So here you have the same product, and it's now selling twice as much and for twice as much. So, think about all the products in your area. These restaurateurs and other people are making products, and then you're using those artists to make sure stuff looks really great, because you can charge tons more when your product looks really great. Okay, so you have microbrewers. Everybody's got a microbrewery now, right? Okay, but what we have, thousands and thousands and thousands of people now come to our Ohio Brew Week. Look at the nice graphics, right? We're getting artists involved. In there, we bring out these, 70-year-old musicians who are all gonna die playing rock and roll, right? We all know those people. Oh my gosh. But again, you have the whole week, every restaurant, every recipe has beer in it. And so, it's just like really creative, and then you get them to bottle the stuff. They make a salad dressing that's got beer in it, and now you've got a new product. So it's just this whole thing of being rhizomatic. So don't forget that word. Keep thinking, like everything you do, how can this be more? How can we bud something off it? How can we make it bigger? And how can it build leadership? You can do all kinds of things. We're bringing together then another really nice graphic, right? So bring people together to do brands. And see, the way I feel, lots of people, they get everybody together, they have a big talk network, right? They talk for 2 years about what their brand's gonna be for their town or their region, and they never end, they can't agree. I say, heck with it, make 1 million brands. Just anybody who wants to create a brand, that makes it interesting. People don't mind lots of brands if they're cute, and just start playing around with branding. And so, this one, all they used this brand for, it helped people who were like teensy businesses and didn't even have the little barcodes get into the big grocery stores. And because you could just go to the manager, oh, I'm part of that Food We Love thing. They'll say, oh, our supermarkets have really long, long shelves of local products. So, you start getting, tours and trails, festivals. They're all ways for arts and music and food and all that, and fun to all work together. We have now a huge 17-county mural trail, and so artists are getting work painting murals or helping young people paint murals, and people are having fun driving around, stopping at all these. Okay, so how do you create, arts is great, food is great, but, people cannot live by bread alone. You've got to have other parts of your economy. Now, what you'll find is that, as this town did, that 2 really big, a manufacturer and a huge online book distributor stayed in our community because their employees were telling them it was such a cool place to live that they didn't want to move. But then at the same time, you have to be realizing that you've got to get your economic development folks to make sure, is there incubation space, industrial park space, is there money for these businesses to grow, and that needs to be part of your network. And so, don't forget about that part as well, because we're a big ecosystem out there and we need lots of different kinds of businesses. And don't forget about your politicians. They need to feel like your network is their network and that they're part of it, that they're hearing about what's going on, and they will bring you money. This is actually from the grape region thing where they got a couple $1 million to build a grape discovery center, and that then became the hub for a lot of other things. But, you're going to want policy changed, you're going to need that relationship, and so it's a key part of it. So closing act, we got to celebrate and reflect. So, you got to eat food together, you got to talk about all the wonderful things, appreciate all the hard work people have done, you got to, take pictures of people, and you got to have fun. It's got to be fun. Or, how are we all gonna get through it all? So just in closing, be rhizomatic. Your network is constantly reaching out and forming new collaboratives that are making more and more interesting things happen. So, just ask yourself, how can I help leaders see themselves as network weavers? And how can you help people understand about this thing we call self-organizing or collaboratives? How can we develop a better periphery? How can we encourage what I call unusual suspects to work together? Get those government types with those artists and see what happens. It's very interesting. How can we encourage successful projects to expand and be more? How can we develop the system of network support for the region? So with that, I've got these 2 handbooks, 30 years of my life in these handbooks. I'll be selling them. I've got a long version and then a shorter version for those that, are intimidated by the weight, you have shoulder problems or something. It's pretty heavy. I'll be over in the exhibit area, or I have a few here you could nab up. But the thing about this is I wrote it because I wanted people to be able to just take it and run, not need more training or need more of whatever, but just take it and run. So it's very practical guide. And if you want some more, I want to just say Deborah McLaren here, maybe you can stand up. She's another person that's been working on this networking stuff or just doing some great work. And here's just some other contacts. We have a Facebook page you can join, and Are we gonna put this somewhere where this PowerPoint, where people can get this information about? But if you look on Network Weaving on Facebook, there's a group of like 500 people who can answer any question you have. So good luck. I think you're already doing this. It's just do it a little more, a little smarter, right? Okay, take care. Yeah.